So Eskom is in the news. The power utility has suspended the general manager at the Koeberg Nuclear Power Station over what it's labelled performance-related issues. Let's find out more from a spokesperson, Sikonathi Mantshantsha, who joins me now via Zoom. Sikonathi, thank you for your time. How long has this particular individual not been doing his job properly?
He was placed on suspension yesterday, Omar, because of the concerns that the management team has over that particular plant. I must state right up front, because we're talking about a nuclear plant facility here, that there are no nuclear safety issues at this point. It's just the performance of the power station as a whole has not been satisfactory, and management has decided to place the power station manager on suspension in order to investigate what exactly is wrong with the performance of the station.
Okay, so you say the suspension was yesterday, but you also say that management have had problems with this particular person's performance for some time. I'm assuming this doesn't just happen. How long have they been
Management have not been very happy with the performance of the power station under the leadership of the said person for some time. You will know, Omar, that in January, Unit 1 of Koeberg Power Station went on an outage, which had been planned to begin late in January, but this had to happen on the 3rd of January, due to a fault that was discovered in the system. And so this then extended the planned outage that would have happened starting late January. And the unit was supposed to have returned to service during May. It is still not back. The best estimate at this very point is that we will have the unit back in the 3rd week of June. There have been other issues as well that have concerned management at this point, which has now taken this decision to investigate and see what can be done to improve the performance of this power station.
Now, nuclear, I assume, is complex. I'm not an engineer, I have no idea, but we all think when we hear nuclear, that's why you had to make that caveat right at the beginning saying, no, don't worry, there's nothing wrong, there are no leaks. Do we have enough skills in the country to support the nuclear utility that we have?
Eskom has been running the Koeberg nuclear facility for now 40 years. All of that time it has been run entirely by South Africans who are still in the country and who are being trained. We do have sufficient depth in terms of the management, in terms of the skills that we need. There are, of course, some functions such as the refueling that for the last, let's say, 10 years or so has been conducted by people coming from outside of the country. The running of the station itself, we have absolutely no reason to worry about the skills that Eskom does have available.
Thank you for that. I want to move on to something slightly different. On Friday, we were scheduled to have load shedding, as we have had for a few days last week, and it's continuing through the weekend. However, we were able to stop the load shedding for a virtual sitting of Parliament. How is it possible, when we know that there is no capacity, that we can turn it on for an event like a virtual sitting of Parliament? Where does that come from? Where does that power come from?
We stated clearly, Omar, in the statement that, one, this would now cause Eskom some additional financial commitments, in that we would have to run additional emergency generation reserves that we were trying to replenish even at that very point. However, due to the very importance of the sitting, where you could not isolate Parliament, which is always isolated when the need arrives, when people sit in the House. But because it's a virtual briefing, they were all over the country, the members of Parliament. You could not protect the particular institution as the law permits. So we had to burn some diesel in order to accommodate the sitting of the House, due to the national the importance of the event that held, which is made for in Rule NRS 48-9 of the NERSA regulations. And as I said earlier, this indeed did cost additional resources in terms of money. And of course, the most important part, which really did make all of it possible for the 5 hours that was required, was that large energy intensive users voluntarily agreed, at the request of Eskom, of course, to reduce their usage of electricity in order to make this happen. It was a once-off agreement that we really had to pull through, and we thank the industrial community, the large users, for making that happen.
Sikonathi, do you have any special insights that can help brief us on how much worse it could get? Because this winter has just begun.
Omar, the reality of the matter is that Eskom does not have sufficient capacity to fully power this country, and we will therefore continue to have these bouts of load shedding. We may stop now, as we will this evening. You will receive a statement shortly that we are suspending load shedding at 10 p.m. But we will be resuming at 5 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, between 5 and 10, in order again to continue replenishing the emergency reserves. The reality of the matter, though, as we have continuously communicated, is that South Africa is short of generation capacity, and we will keep having these problems until, one, we can bring new additional capacity at 4,000 megawatts of electricity, and of course Eskom is able to perform maintenance sufficient to bring these generation units that it currently uses into a reliable state of performance. That, unfortunately, no one can give you the exact time frame for that.
Of course, you know that we all know this is not a new problem. And as a spokesperson for Eskom for a few years now, you know there's been constant conversation about supplementing our power generation with other sources of power. And, of course, there's the talk about the Turkish ship offshore. There's been talk about renewable energy. Is any of that being expedited? Because the economy really, as you know, cannot afford this.
No, let me just start right at the beginning, and this might help some members of the public. The procurement of electricity by law is the domain of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, which also decides the policy. It will license anyone, including Eskom, to build a power station. So that is their role through the IPP office. That's what they do. And as you now know, you mentioned the Kapo Power Ship. The department has procured another 1,600 to 2,600 megawatts of power. That will only come into the grid to help in more than 2 years' time. So that's not getting us out of our current problems. So that's where the procurement of new power comes from law designed and indeed executed by the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. For Eskom, what it does need to do, and has not been doing as well as it should for 14 years now, is to make sure that these as many as possible of its generation units deliver electricity reliable, and that has not been happening. Hence, Eskom has, for the past now 14 months, told the people of South Africa that it will execute what it calls reliability maintenance, to catch up on the maintenance that we have at times skipped to this, which brought us to this kind of disaster that we are in now in terms of provision of electricity. We're executing the reliability maintenance in order to recover that and improve the performance of the plant. However, as I did say earlier, that is not sufficient to end load shedding. We do need additional generation capacity.
Sikonathi, irresponsible of me if I don't end with this very brief question. It's World Environment Day today. We are going to bring online 2 of the largest coal-fired power stations in the world in a couple of years' time. How are we going to make sure that we do what we need to ensure that the world doesn't have more problems? Because coal is the dirtiest way of powering our country.
As a condition of building and of the World Bank funding the construction of the Kusile power station at 4,800 megawatts, the Kusile Power Station agreed, or Eskom agreed, to install flue gas desulfurization technology, which cleans up the environment in order to limit these emissions and indeed improve the environment. That is on, and right now Kusile is working on those. Medupi Power Station, we are exploring alternatives and indeed to see what technologies can be installed to actually limit the environmental emissions. That's on the newer plant that is under construction. And I must also state, at the current moment, the cost of installing the FGD, that flue gas desulfurization technology on Medupi, is estimated at over 40 billion rand. We need to state very clearly that at this very point, Eskom is still exploring the funding and the options, including installing technology or investments elsewhere that can help and counter and reduce overall emissions of Eskom. We are doing that through the JET system, the Just Energy Transition, which is looking for alternative sources of fuel to coal in 4 older power stations at this point, which are amongst the worst emitters in South Africa.
Sikonathi, thank you for your time. I haven't held your feet to the fire sufficiently, but I'm sure I'll have a moment or an occasion at some future date. Have a good weekend, even though it might be very cold for all of us as we continue to have load shedding through to 10 p.m. tonight.